Am actually still on my way back north from Kensington. I was posting pictures from there earlier today, but I thought I would give you from the road some quick impressions of what we saw there. So I was there, and as was Bill Allen, our outreach coordinator for the Pennsylvania Patriot Coalition today. In Kensington, there were a whole bunch of predominantly Christian groups on the street in Kensington, sort of a Take Back the Streets event. Uh, if you're not familiar with Kensington, it is a neighborhood in Philadelphia which has effectively turned into an open air drug market, particularly since the fentanyl crisis, but it was prior to that regarded as a heroin bazaar. Um, I've seen video of Kensington before. I was aware that it was sort of like a scene out of the Walking Dead or some zombie movie. But really, that doesn't really do it justice because that's all fiction. You know it's fiction. When you're in Kensington, it's real, and it's as real as as it gets. I've spent some time in some very ugly places over the course of my life and my career. Uh, this is right up there. The sidewalks are simply covered in people, wasting away, rotting away, drugged out of their minds, unconscious, shooting up in broad daylight. The streets are literally littered with syringes. I mean, they're everywhere. Uh, there are a few shopkeepers there, and uh, they're out sweeping them up with push brooms and filling trash cans with syringes, and that's not an exaggeration. It's just absolutely horrifying. I was really struck by the incredible compassion of the people that were down there today, ministering, trying to save souls in the most literal sense possible. Also struck by the fact that this goes on all day, every day in broad daylight in Philadelphia, one of our great cities. And the federal government and the Commonwealth aren't doing anything whatsoever to clean this up. The fentanyl epidemic it kills 100,000 people in the United States every year. Nobody cares. The border is absolutely wide open, and the poison just continues to flood in. Josh Shapiro was the chief law enforcement officer of the Commonwealth for years before he became governor, and he obviously didn't care either. I did note that during this event, the Christian groups that were there were setting up sort of a pavilion where they were going to have a band to play, and all of a sudden we had Philadelphia cops, including some very, very senior Philadelphia police officers, there because this was a massive controversy that these Christian groups were setting up a tent and going to have a band and play in a street, by the way, that the police had blocked off and turned into a pedestrian path. So they weren't stopping traffic. They were setting up in an area that the police had already cordoned off. But apparently somewhere along the line, they didn't have exactly the right paperwork. So the next thing you know, we actually had very senior Philadelphia police officers on site to mediate this incredible crisis. They ultimately did allow the band to set up. But meanwhile, while they were deciding whether Christian groups trying to save souls could operate, there were literally people sticking syringes in their arms not 20 feet away, and people unconscious on the sidewalk everywhere. It's like a scene out of hell, and the police completely disinterested, the city government completely disinterested. But God, I tell you, somebody didn't have the right permit for that tent, and that was a crisis. It took hours to resolve that. I also had some very interesting conversations with some folks down there from some of the Christian groups, explaining how basically the city awards contracts for tens of millions of dollars to all sorts of secular nonprofits, all of whom are theoretically providing some degree of service. I can't imagine what that would be to these people who are literally living in their own filth on the sidewalk, wasting away, literally like skeletons. Somebody is getting millions of dollars from the city to provide, again, some mysterious service to them. And so what these pastors were saying, folks with these Christian charities were saying is, those folks don't want this crisis to end, because if they solve this crisis and clean up the streets and Kensington is not a hellhole anymore, then all of a sudden they're going to lose tens of millions of dollars in contract money. So sometimes you hear this logic in regard to defense contractors. If you end the war, they're not going to make money anymore. Well, seems to be kind of the same thing, doesn't it? It's like if we don't have addicts laying around on the sidewalk, then all of a sudden somebody's gravy train is going to get cut off. It was a very, very, very sobering day, I got to tell you. Again, I've been some ugly places, and I had seen a lot of video of Kensington before, and nothing prepares you for standing there looking at some 75-year-old woman who weighs about 60 pounds, sticking a needle in her arm, lying on a filthy blanket on the sidewalk, and that's where she lives. That's Kensington. And we got a lot of work to do, and to clean it up. And the folks that are supposed to be cleaning it up apparently aren't doing their jobs. Anyway, that's a quick. I'm still trying to make my way home series of impressions. Talk to you soon.